Hi, I'm Lori Sulpizio, and we're going to talk about the book 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. This book was a game changer for me. If you're anything like me, you often feel yanked between competing commitments, to-do lists that seem to go on forever, and uncompleted tasks that wear on your sanity. And then I read this book, and it has changed the way I think about time, my relationship to it, and the choices I make as I go through my day. As always, I'm going to pull directly from the author's words when I can, giving some summaries and insights of my own, but these ideas are coming from this book, and it's such a great book. I hope you pick it up and read it for yourself. The core ideas of this book come down to two things. One, we need to face the reality that includes our finitude. It's not that we have limited time, it's that we are limited time. We're really just our own essence of time moving through the world until our time is over. And our finitude relates to our life, but also to what's available to us in life. There are an infinite amount of things to do and experience in the world, and we'll never be able to do everything that we want to do, see everything we want to see. That's just a true fact. And it would serve us to face the tension and discomfort of that fact instead of fighting so hard against it with productivity and time management strategies that are destined to fail. Second, we need to learn to choose thoughtfully and intentionally. Because of the infinite choices that are available to us, and because our habits around work, which are always trying to get us to get more done in the day, we need to learn to make conscious choices, knowing that when we say no to one thing, we're saying yes to something else. We need to embrace the fact that every choice we make about what to do with our time requires sacrifices. But we can embrace the fact that we get to choose and be happy about that. And each choice symbolizes a commitment to choosing what matters most. So we might want to take our ability to choose seriously. Most of us spend time thinking about our time management, and yet, as Burkeman says, the modern discipline known as time management, like its hipper cousin productivity, is a depressingly narrow-minded affair, focused on how to crank through as many work tasks as possible while figuring out the perfect morning routine, or cooking all of your dinners in one big batch on Sunday. These things do matter, they're just not all that matters. The world is bursting with wonder, and yet the productivity gurus don't seem to consider the possibility all of our doing might actually be to experience more of that wonder and less of the tasks we seem so preoccupied with. I mean, think about it. We have rebranded busyness as hustle, trying to frame relentless work not as a burden to be endured, but as an exhilarating lifestyle choice. But as the author says, it's the same old problem. We're pushed to an extreme, feeling pressure to fit ever-increasing quantities of activity into a stubbornly not increasing quantity of time. And here's the paradox with all of these productivity methods and time management apps. It's not that they don't work, they do work. But what happens when we get more done and squeeze the most out of our time is that we only feel busier, more anxious, and emptier as a result. Think about your email. Once you get through efficiently answering all of your emails, reply to who you need to reply to, and get all that out of your inbox, all that happens is you get much more email, replies to your replies, filling up that inbox once again. And Burkeman says the maddening truth about time is that the more you struggle to control it, to make it conform to your agenda, the further it slips from your control. Essentially, this whole book is about how we have attempted to do things to give us a false sense of control around time and our lives. And so we find ourselves spending our time trying to squeeze in all the wrong things, and rarely do we get around to doing the right things. We have the sense that there's more important and fulfilling ways we could be spending our time, but we don't do those things because we're focused on getting through other tasks to get them out of the way, hoping that one day we'll do the things that are more meaningful. The core problem to all of this is our idea about how to use time. The medieval farmer got up with the sun and slept at dusk. There was no anxious pressure to get everything done because the farmer's work was infinite, never ending, and never complete. There would always be another cow to milk and another harvest, so there was no sense in racing towards some hypothetical moment of completion. But then we invented the clock, and time became a resource for us to use. When this happened, we began to feel pressure, whether it's from an external source or from ourselves, to use time wisely and not waste it. Additionally, the Industrial Revolution brought with it factory owners who could pay people by the hour. So you want to squeeze out as much labor as possible in that hour. So not only did time become an instrument, but people did. The fundamental problem is that this attitude towards time sets up a rigged game in which it's impossible to ever feel as though you're doing well enough. We've learned to value each moment primarily according to its usefulness to some future goal. So the alternative attitude, the book suggests, is not to think about having time, but to think about being time. Each of us are our own time, and that time will end at some point that we don't know. He doesn't say this to be morbid, but to highlight the fact that our life is finite. He says that this life, with all of its flaws and inescapable vulnerabilities, its extreme brevity, and our limited influence over how our life unfolds, is the only one we'll get a shot at. Life is short, and you'll never get to do all the awesome things that life has available to you. So if we confront our finitude, the brevity of life, and our limited control, we can actually make choices to give us a more productive, meaningful, and joyful life. The reality is that hard choices are unavoidable. And what we need to start doing is learning to make them consciously. We need to be intentional about what we focus on and what we neglect, rather than letting things just happen to us by default. We also need to stop deceiving ourselves and thinking that with enough hard work and effective time management, we'll get to do it all, because we just won't. So we could live in a constant state of FOMO, the fear of missing out. Actually, missing out is exactly what makes our choices meaningful in the first place, because every decision that you make on how to use a portion of your time represents a sacrifice for all of the other ways you could have spent your time but didn't. So right here, right now, you can stop buying into the delusion that you're going to be able to effectively manage your time and do everything you want to do. It's impossible. But you can face the facts, embrace your limits, and recognize that you have the ability to make meaningful choices with what you do with your life. So let's get down into some of the helpful ideas in the book. He talks about procrastination, and interestingly, it's not procrastination that's the problem. It's what we're procrastinating. What we need to do is choose more wisely what we're going to procrastinate on in order to focus on what matters most. You might have heard that story where the professor comes into the class with a glass jar, some rocks, some pebbles, and sand, and asks the students to try to fit everything in. Well, the way the story goes is that you put the rocks in first, the big things in your life, then you add the pebbles, the smaller things, and finally, the sand will fit in the space between, allowing you to fit everything in that jar if you just start with your biggest thing. But actually, the story isn't totally true, because the problem is there are too many big rocks to fit in the jar. Of course, the teacher for the demonstration brings just enough rocks to fit, but most of us have too many rocks and they don't make it anywhere near our jar. So we're faced not with differentiating between the activities that matter and that don't matter, but what to do when so many things feel really important. Essentially, we have too many big rocks for the jar. Here's what the book suggests. Number 1, pay yourself first, with your time, that is. So if you have a task that's really important to you, even something like a creative project or nurturing a relationship, don't wait for the time to come to you to do it, but actually make time in your schedule to do what you want. The next one that I definitely have a problem with is to limit your works in progress. We often have so many projects on our plates, but then we jump from one to another when one becomes difficult or boring, and then we crunch it all in at the end to get everything done. So we're never really finished with what's important, and we have these minimal things on our plates, and we can't pay ourselves first because we feel too overwhelmed. Finally, get clear on your top priorities and avoid those middle priorities. This one's going to help us with both 1 and 2. It might be really clear to you what are the most important things you'd like to accomplish right now, but if not, make a list. Be thoughtful with that list and get honest and start ranking them from your top priorities to your least. And then take your top 5 and focus on those. The book says, take the others and get rid of them. It's those moderately appealing priorities that are just sort of interesting and semi-enjoyable that really take our time. So instead, figure out what's really appealing and actually enjoyable and spend your time there. One of the benefits of this book is how it encourages us to develop a particular mindset about the way that we live. He talks about the concept of settling and how we're often presented with the idea that settling is a bad thing. Don't settle on a job you don't want. Don't settle for a relationship that's less perfect. The book suggests that in order to live life to the fullest, you have to settle, because you can't become an ultra successful professional in a career of choice without first settling on that career. And if you never settle on a relationship, you'll never find that long-term companionship and stability that a committed relationship provides. This whole notion of not settling and continuing to strive may just be our avoidance of living in our present and always focusing on the possibility of a more appealing future. A professor at Harvard did this experiment where he let hundreds of people pick a free art poster from the selection of art prints, and they were divided into two groups. One group was told they had a month where they could exchange their poster for any other art print that they wanted, and the other group was told that the decision they made was final. In the follow-up surveys, it was that second group, the ones who were stuck with their decision, who had a greater appreciation for the work of art they selected. They weren't distracted by the thought that it might be possible to get a better piece of art, a different poster, and they were just able to appreciate what they had in front of them. This sounds a lot like gratitude to me. We know that being present and committing and accepting what we have in the moment is what allows gratitude. And then the book talks about distractions and the many distractions in our lives. How many of you have been swiping up on one of the many social media options only to realize that 45 minutes have gone by and you haven't really seen anything all that interesting? When we're talking about distractions, we're talking about our attention and what we are focusing on. The book suggests that we shouldn't describe our attention as a resource of life. Attention, the author suggests, is life. Our experience of being alive consists of nothing other than the sum of everything to which we are paying attention to. So if we think of it this way, distractions aren't only those small moments where we lose focus, but a distraction could be spending time in a job that you don't like for 4 years in a row, taking our attention away from the work we really want to be doing. The problem with distractions is how they take our attention away from things almost without our control. Social media and internet algorithms know how to pull us away from what we're doing by popping up little things in front of our faces, on our devices, and on our screens throughout the day. But the goal isn't to become indistractable, or distraction-free, or have such a targeted focus that nothing pulls your attention. We need outside forces to come in and pull our attention against our will. That's how we know to get out of the way if an oncoming car is coming, or how we know to look up and notice a beautiful sunset, or a flower, or somebody smiling at you. This kind of attention is what neuroscientists call bottom-up, or involuntary attention, and we would struggle to stay alive without it. What we want to develop is our capacity to exert some influence over the other part of attention, or the top-down, voluntary attention. During his time as a prisoner in Auschwitz, the Australian psychotherapist Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, was able to direct a portion of his attention toward the only domain the camp guards couldn't violate, his inner life. Again, we're seeing the importance of our mindset, or our cognitive control. We often get distracted when we don't want to do something, a task that we don't like, children having to do their homework, or when we are experiencing physical pain. We want to put our attention somewhere else, anywhere but the experience we're having in the moment. But interestingly, the book suggests that often the problem isn't the experience we're having, but our resistance to the experience. This is where we need to build up our tolerance for discomfort. We need to be able to sit and stay focused on things that we don't love to experience but have to. So what does the book suggest? The most effective way to sap distraction of its power is to just stop expecting things to be different and accept that the unpleasantness of the moment is what it feels like for finite humans to commit themselves to the kinds of demanding and valuable tasks that force us to confront our limited control over how our lives unfold. There's an acceptance element to this. Even the most enjoyable and meaningful choices in our lives may come with some uncomfortable things and some unwanted tasks. The paperwork to get a new car, paying taxes, going to the dentist, and even the jobs and activities that we love, there's still elements of discomfort. To travel requires airports and layovers and canceled flights. If we can accept where we are in the moment and move through that experience, we'll then be able to get to those things that actually bring us joy and make us smile. Thank you for joining me for this part 1 of 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. Spend some time, try some of these things out. Work on your cognitive capacity and control of your mindset around how you think about time, how you make choices with your life, and allow yourself to determine what's most meaningful to you, what brings you joy, and what matters most. Remember, pay yourself first with your time. Limit the many works in progress you invite onto your plate and take time to prioritize. Think about your attention and the attempt to put it on the moment that you have right in front of you, and then recognize. If you find yourself over and over not loving the moments that you're in, well, maybe it's time to make a shift. The first part of this book to me seems to be about 2 things: facing the truth about our finitude and our mortality, and then learning to choose. Choose what we focus on, choose the things that matter most to us, choose the people that we want to spend time with and bring into our lives. Speaking of time, I know how valuable it is, and I am grateful that you chose to spend your time with me right now. I hope you learned something in this video. I hope you go out and get the book and read it for yourself. And don't forget to check out part 2. Until next time, I'll see you soon.